Today is my lucky day. I get to chat with Mr. Bill Preston. How you doing today, Bill?
I'm very good. How are you, Warren?
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. You've had a really cool career, done a lot of cool stuff, and I can't wait to get some great wisdom from you.
Well, I hope hope that works out for you.
Yeah, I know it's going to. I have complete confidence. So tell me about how you I mean, you're an entrepreneur. How does one get into this? What drove you to do that? Tell me how you started.
Yeah, well, I started probably in a way that I guess I do recommend to my kids. So I guess I could say I recommend is I started with a big company and spent 22 years. Probably don't need that much, but 22 years with Texaco. And the thing that drove me, Warren, to do anything differently was we were acquired by Chevron, as you may know, and Chevron sold our business. I was in um, gas and power, which Chevron decided they didn't want to do and sold our business. And the company they sold it to was not that interested. Let me say it in a positive way. They wanted to put their own leadership in and didn't uh, want me to be a leader right away. And so I decided I'd go off and do something else. And happened. I had some friends who were wanting to try to develop projects on their own, using insurance as a backstop instead of a big balance sheet. So we did that for 4 years and got my feet wet as far as working for a small company. And uh, the only thing that kind of got in the way there was that was 2004, and 4 years later, you might remember 2008 was the credit crunch, and we didn't go under, but I had my kids were just about to go to college, and I was looking at a lot of expenses, and I didn't know if we would make it through that credit problem, and so I decided I'd go get on somebody else's payroll. So I worked for a series of smaller companies until I was finally recruited for the job I'm in now, which is running an engineering, kind of a medium-sized engineering company. So
That's super cool. Okay, so I agree, and I think it's good wisdom to work for a large company for a period
mhm.
of time because you get a big education. Can you talk to me about that? Because you said you recommended it to your kids, so I'd love
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I've kind of come to appreciate it more and more, Warren, over the years. There's the basics of just learning what business is like and whatever field you're in. Mine was the energy field. Big company can expose you to all that if you play it right, and don't get stuck in a too small of a box. But the kind of resources a big company has to be involved and really learn your trade a little bit, I think is super valuable. One more thing though that I've learned more recently from it is this generation, which includes my kids, and COVID may have a piece of this or not. I don't know. Um, Really um, has a sometimes a lack of understanding in how to work with other people, and I think what I didn't realize I was learning in my young life, working for a larger company, is you have layers and layers of mentors that you don't even know are mentoring you, but you're
Mm.
some of it you're just observing how they act. Some of it is actual people, taking you under their wing. But with a smaller company, a lot of times you don't have that. And especially these days with people working out of their house, you don't get that. And I've been sort of an eye opener now. Sometimes younger people, smart people, well meaning, but just don't know how to act and just don't know how things are done, how to treat customers, how to act in a big meeting, and you know what I mean? That just some things that probably you and I took for granted that when you look at it, some you just don't have any opportunity to learn, and that's one thing I think you can get from a large company. Just like I say, the sheer layers of people that you can either observe or actually will take an interest in you. You know.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's brilliant. I hadn't thought about the idea of how to act in a meeting and how to work across matrixed organizations and get stuff done internally, because there's a lot of politics in these companies too. But
Right.
that teaches you, and those mentors, especially if you have mentors that are intentional or unintentional,
Yes.
those those folks are teaching you that, hey, look, no, you got to navigate through this thing. You can't just go right at them and ask for what you want sometimes, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Really good. I mean, there's some very basic. We've taken a lot of pride in after kind of a series of false starts. We've had our office managers and slash receptionists, which are kind of the same job here because we're not very big. We've started with some, in this case, women, didn't have to be, but they are, that were not through with their degree or whatever, and we're working still and to get their degrees and so forth. And then when they got them, we were able to promote them and actual do what they got their degree for. And that's worked out very well for us. But the last woman we had was just a super person, and she came to us. I think she was just 21 when she started with us, maybe even 20. Well, she would just barge into meetings and start talking to me, and I had to say, don't do that. I'm dealing with customers. That's the priority here. And, you can't just come in and assume I'm yours, even though normally day to day I am. And then just very simple stuff is when people come in here in the morning, smile at them, say hello. You don't have to be buried in your phone,
Yes.
And I don't remember having to learn that stuff, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact of the matter is you do have to learn that stuff, and like I say, I think sometimes in a small company, and especially with the emphasis these days in being able to work at home, you just miss that sometimes.
So there's a great takeaway there for those folks that are doing that and building companies is number one, to have a mentor.
Yes.
Two, and
Yes.
to specifically kind of learn those crafts in a way that probably intentionally that we didn't have to do because we were getting this sort of paid education on the job.
Right. No, I think that's right.
So what's a great advantage from a smaller, you worked at small companies and large companies. What's the big advantage of small companies? I think some of them are obvious, being nimble, but what
Yeah,
else?
no, that's a really good question. Because there's definitely things on both sides of that ledger. I think the big one, Warren, and that just knocks you in the head is you have opportunity to get into parts of the business that you'd have to take years in a large company to do. And here, if I'll tell you, just certainly in my experiences, if you show some interest and show some competence, instead of taking years to get there, you can do it in days. Because we don't have, we don't have 5 people for every position kind of thing, and so the growth I think that's possible is much greater in responsibility and breadth, and even to jump around a little bit to different parts of the company, and instead of a big deal, I mean, it can be as simple as just talking to the boss and say, I'd like to try this, and that's a big thing. I think as far as when you're in the leadership of a smaller company, this is one I think maybe just being an older guy, Warren, I'm starting to see, is you have an opportunity to really inject your personality into the business, um, uh, whatever that may be. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but in other words, you can really, if you want to have a caring, ethical company, you can make it so, you know. You don't have to, like with a large company, I've come to appreciate a lot of the bureaucracy and a lot of the rules and sometimes that we used to be frustrated with. You got to have them because you don't know the people. You don't know who you're going to have. You know, here in a smaller company, and now maybe this is more of a mid-sized company now. Yeah, actually, I know everybody by first name, and I don't have to make general rules as much because I know the people. I know who I'm dealing with. And and like I say, if you want to say we're not going to put up with X, you don't have to put up with it. You know, that's and on the other hand, if we're going to encourage Y, we can encourage it. You know, and make a big deal. So I think that's from a leadership point of view been one of the things that sometimes kind of scary because you wonder you wonder if it's right, but it's also very rewarding too when it works out, you know. So
Isn't it amazing how you can walk into a organization, whether that's a company or a college campus, and
right,
you can get a pretty good feel for the culture of the place
yes,
within 30 minutes of being there,
no doubt, no doubt.
and how different they are. And that's all based on the leadership and what they're projecting down through the organization, right?
Exactly, exactly. And you know, with a huge oil company, I mean that culture's been established
Mm.
years ago, and it's very, you can turn that boat, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of people, and probably not you know, going to be any big major change. Whereas like you say, with a smaller group, we can do that. So
And also it's as important of what you say you stand for as
mhm.
also what you allow to happen.
Right,
Whatever you're
right.
allowed to happen is also part of your culture, correct?
Yes, no doubt. No doubt. You know, it's been rewarding to me as I am actually, you know, as I'd mentioned to you, I think when we were getting ready for this, I'm getting ready. I'm in the glide path to retirement here, and I've had people say, you know, this was really an organization I felt like cared about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow, that's pretty cool. You know, I didn't realize that, and I certainly didn't set out to do that. But like I say, I think you have an opportunity to sort of impose that by, like you say, what you allow and what you encourage. You know, that the same way. And you know, I think we hired people like that, uh, and and kind of made short work of folks that weren't like that. You know what I mean? And certainly who we put into leadership, and that's another thing with a smaller company. I guess, Warren, is one of the tools that I don't think is as easy in a big organization is I screwed up several times and put the wrong person in a position they really turned out weren't so good at. You know,
Mm-hmm.
usually that way where they were very good technically, and so they kind of deserved a but when they got in a position that was more of a people position, they were no good at it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I screwed that up multiple times. And the thing that was nice about a smaller group is that's not that big a deal. You can go to them and say, hey, look, you know, I think you were much better you know, in what you used to do than this. And you know, we can make sure you don't hurt from a salary standpoint, but I want to get somebody else a position to be in the leadership. And I will say virtually 100% of the time, that person has welcomed that because they weren't liking it any more than we were liking them. You know,
Yes, yes,
you know, where
yes.
in a big organization, that'd be very difficult and probably would be very disruptive, you know, and misinterpreted and all that kind of stuff because the person would be getting that message third hand or whatever and
Yes.
wouldn't get the right message, you know. So that's another one that I think it in answer to your question, another way to is the kind of uh, uh, mid-level managers can definitely either screw up your desires or encourage them, you know, and so you got to get the right people there, you know.
For sure. Unlike you, I've never made a bad hire.
There you go.
Yeah, I know
There you
exactly what you're talking about.
go.
It's funny how it, the people skills the people skills are trump almost everything else in any sort of leadership position, but
Right.
then also even in some of these lower level positions like we talked about, it becomes so important. And if you want to grow, that's important. I guess the other thing I learned from a mentor uh, several jobs ago was, hey, look, don't over promote yourself. So to me,
Yeah.
it's like, make sure before you take the next up isn't always better. Up doesn't mean more career happiness for me. It might mean a little more money,
Yeah.
but the example you cited where, hey, look, this person was really good technically, but maybe they don't like being a leader and maybe they shouldn't be a leader. It's not for everyone. That's for sure.
Right. No, I think that's a great point, Warren. And it's, I, I know I learned it somewhere along the line. I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember where, but what I was kind of taught as I kind of got promoted through the ranks was all you're doing, you're getting more and more bosses. You know, in other words, at this point where I have a chance to be president of a company, I've got everybody who works here as my boss. I'm working for all of them, you know, and that sounds like a cliche, but I really felt it a good amount of time. Is I'm here, and if anybody here is failing it in some way, it's my fault. You know, whether they shouldn't be in that job, or whether we didn't get a project we should have gotten, or whatever. So I agree with you. It's not. Yeah, I think you can make a real mistake if you have those kind of ambitions to do leadership jobs, if you think of them as, boy, this is going to be a real ego boost for me. It really isn't. It really is more and more of a burden you're taking on, and you got to be the kind of person who wants to take it on, you know.
Yeah, you've got to be motivated. You got to be motivated by it. But that's brilliant what you said. I actually hadn't heard that before. That you have more and more bosses. I never thought about the organization in that perspective. But that's why you have an organization where people feel cared about, is because you actually care about them,
Well,
right?
fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. I will say, you know, again, now that I'm kind of winding it up here, is my kids ask me sometimes, you know, what was the best part, and what did you aspire to? And I will say, Warren, it again, it sounds corny, but I would love walking around in the morning, seeing everybody come in, you know, and thinking, man, it's just cool that we're supporting all these families, you know, all these people's families are depending on what we do, you know, and in some ways in some days that would be a tremendous stress, but
Right.
some days it was just super rewarding to know we were having that kind of um, importance in not only these people's lives, but their spouses, their kids, and everything else. So, um, you know, that, like I say, and that's not a ego thing. It's the kind of the opposite. It's sort of realizing you're just here serving, you know.
Yes, it's so true. And I
You're scooping the soup.
yeah. And the other point that you made there is so important. It's like small mid-sized businesses actually make a huge impression on our communities, our families, our communities, our charities. And if small and medium-sized businesses flourish, our families flourish, our communities flourish, our charities flourish, it becomes a
Absolutely.
better place to live. And that
Absolutely.
is a huge motivator as a person that owns a business and works with businesses. Like that's what keeps me going during the tough days when things maybe aren't going as well as you want to.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what else do you? So you've had some successes and misses in your hiring, as have I. What do
Mhm.
you look for? Like what is your drop dead deal maker and deal breaker when you're talking about hiring somebody? What are you looking for?
Well, there's some obvious things like for example, what I'll say here, and you know, one thing that again has changed in my career, especially being in an engineering business. Uh, we have two offices. I'm in Houston today, and this office here in Houston is 60, last time I checked, maybe closer to 70% female, you know, which
Okay.
in an engineering business used to be crazy talk. We have another office up in Tyler that's a little more tilted male, but what I will say, you know, that's a two-way street for whoever I'm talking to is, you know, we're going to be respectful here. We have zero tolerance. You do any kind of sexual harassment stuff, you're out, no warning. It's just done. And I've had to pull that trigger twice.
Wow.
And I will say once for a male, once for a female. So it runs both ways. And but that's kind of the sort of the baseline sort of stuff. And again, any kind of disrespect, if you're going to be in a management position, to me is zero tolerance. You know, you can be tough, but you can't be abusive, you know, and or even get close to that line. You know, I don't think it's effective for one thing, but also it's not the kind of place we want to be. But you know, probably a little more interesting to you. You know, I what we do here that I try to emphasize and just applies to this business, may not apply to others, but we want to be technically excellent. And and then also we want to be easy to work with.
Wow.
And sometimes those things in a technical side, as you probably know, Warren, they compete with each other. You know, you get people who are really good technically, which frankly is not that's kind of my attitude is there's the best way to it seems kind of dumb, but it's not that common in our business, especially for a mid-sized engineering company. A lot compete on cost. A lot compete on you know, like you say, just being very easy on terms or whatever it is. We try to compete on quality and being really taking a back seat to no larger company in terms of competency. And that's a little risky, you know, because that's not inexpensive. But then on the other hand, it does differentiate us, you know, and so to me, it's just part of who we want to be. But then on the other hand, a lot of people who are very technically excellent can be very rigid when it comes to, or just not very good at dealing with customers and make it very difficult. And this was the first job throughout my whole career I was working on from an owner's side, and when I interviewed for this job, I said, I've never worked for an engineering company before. I don't know why you want me to run one, but because I was recruited. But I did say, you know, I have hired a lot of engineering companies in my time, and I have a pretty good idea what not to do, you know. And that was one of them. I just find a lot of folks in our business make it so difficult to hire them, you know,
Yes.
for all lots of different reasons. But that's one thing I wanted to make sure we did is let's be easy to work with. Let's be a pleasure to work with. And that can cover up for a lot of things, a lot of mistakes, you know. So
It's fun that you were hired and brought a consumer perspective, or not a consumer,
right,
client perspective to
right.
the business. And maybe there's something there to hiring somebody from the client side because they get the experience.
I think so. And you know, I give our owner at the time a lot of credit because it was, looking back on it, it was kind of risky. to do that. And I did have to learn a lot about how this business works, and I had to depend on a lot of people, that helped me with that. But I did have probably, if I had had a whole career of being on this side of the table, I like to say it, you do get a little blind to what the customer is seeing,
Uh-huh.
and thinking, we have to do this, this, and this. And then when you say, well, I don't know if you do, it's running off people, and so you better make sure you really have to do it. And since I've gotten here, I've found a lot of those things you don't have to do, and there's no real value in
Uh-huh.
some of the assumptions, I think, that are made. Is you got to have this, you got to do that, you got to make this clear. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's worth it, to run off people to get these things, because they very rarely come up. So that's just one of those things, that work that way. I didn't plan.
Yes. So as a leader, though, coming in from the outside, how'd you navigate that? Because I'm sure that that probably wasn't met necessarily with a lot of open arms. But,
No, that's absolutely true. I think there was a certain amount of certainly, our business may be a little different than some. Is we had a single owner at the time, and we had some run-ins early on, and he was right sometimes. It's just things I hadn't learned yet. On the other hand, I think I was able to push back the line a little bit on some others. But to your point, I think gaining the respect of the employees is a lot more important. And that doesn't come, I think, in any business, doesn't come automatically. There's a certain amount of, you can impose your will, but that's awful hard work. When people, it's a lot easier when they actually respect you and they really want it. They really think what you say probably is right, then I have to say it's right, because, guy's got a certain amount of power. But it sure goes a lot better and that took several years, I think,
yeah, that's not overnight. And I feel
Right.
like in the companies I've been in, it's like you got to show that you can actually that you have game and
Right.
that you add value
Right.
and that you care. I think those are the
Absolutely.
three things.
I think all of those things are super important, and then you throw on top, if you have a little success, and things seem like, oh well, by golly, I mean, the stop clock actually was right a couple of times a day, then that helps a little bit too. But what you said is absolutely right. So.
What about okay, so tell me I don't know if you're a reader or not, but like any great books you'd recommend that are must reads for somebody that's
Well,
coming?
that's a good one, because I when I was a younger guy, I read like crazy, and I'm gonna have a hard time coming up with some of them, but uh, a lot of the books. Who was the guy? Uh, uh, Very, very customer oriented guy that talked about businesses, when I was younger, and I read all of his books.
Like Jim Collins,
Um,
great. Any of
Gosh,
those?
um, it's terrible. I'm not gonna be able to come
I
up.
know how you feel.
It's bad. That's bad. But then more recently, the 7 Habits of Successful People.
Sure.
That was a good one. But I will say, I got it to where I thought, I'd sort of squeeze that lemon as much as it could be squeezed. But one of the guys in our organization, wanted to do this, one of these conferences with a book author. And I'm not, again, I'm gonna have a hard time coming up with his name, but uh, we went to one of these conferences, and I've since I know. It's on my Audible. Hold on. That's where all my books are, on my
Of course they are.
audiobooks. Um,
Which, by the way, gives us a really easy way to multitask.
it is, because especially like I mentioned, we have two offices, so in driving in between them, I just put on a book almost all the time. You
Mhm.
know, it is Jim Collins that you mentioned, Good to Great.
Yep.
Which you know, and I actually saw him
Ah,
speak,
cool.
and it was like a all day workshop kind of thing, and I really incorporated some of that stuff, you know, for an old dog to learn some new tricks. So he was really good. You know, uh, and he talked about a lot of the things we've talked about, like having the right people in the right jobs, you know, how critical that is, and really having an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, and then having an understanding of how to get there, you know,
Yes.
uh, and what you're willing to do to get there, you know, and what are the steps. Uh, that that I found really good.
Isn't that something too? Like we have them, we call them BFOs, blinding
Yeah,
flashes of the obvious. Some of
right.
this is stuff that we knew
Yes,
and just kind of quit doing or didn't emphasize. And it's like, what
yes,
I have to get back, the get back to basics,
right,
blocking and tackling, whatever you want to use in that slot. But some of that,
right.
sometimes it's like, oh, wait a minute, we've strayed from our main objective.
Yes.
We started focusing on the little things, and we're not doing the basics right.
No, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And you know, uh, as much as you start to think you know it all, and then you go back and look, like for example, I don't know, you're probably not old enough, Warren, but we had this deal. I think I want to say it's probably early '90s. There was quality was the thing, and the one of the underlying things was working with suppliers and
Hmm.
not always bashing heads together and taking low bid. Sometimes it was working out with a supplier, uh, you know, exactly what you're looking for, exactly, you know, what you want to pay for it, and working with that guy as a more as a partner than a
Yeah.
adversary. And that kind of went out of style, but I have found that in the right, you know, in the right context to be great idea, you know. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and um, Um, you know, do you shave off every nickel? No. Do you end up saving $1 because you paid a few extra nickels? Yes. You know,
Yes.
and you got to where you wanted to be, and you know, uh, uh, ended up with a somebody who was had aligned interests with you, you know, rather than somebody who was, like I say, sort of an adversary, you know. So
Well, no matter who you're supplying, whether you're getting your house painted or whether you're doing a procurement deal for millions and millions of dollars, the
right.
you know the good, cheap, and fast, you can have two out of three, but you can't have all three.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's
what
another
you
way to
better
say
pick
it.
the one
No,
you want, right? Or you
no
can pick
doubt.
the two you want, but you cannot have all three. Most of my
Absolutely.
clients, actually, whether they're retail or they're business to business, are not the cheapest. In
Right.
fact, and I tell them to say it up front. Hey, look, if you want the cheapest, I'm probably not your person, because
Sure.
ascribing that, adding that value, and positioning yourself as not the cheapest, because if you compete on price, you live on price, you die on price.
Yes.
And what we want to offer is a product or service that has some extra value and has some extra easy button,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I can give you, you know, I'm sure it's important in your business is if I have that familiarity with your organization and what you're trying to accomplish, you know, sticking with me is you know, you may pay a little more per hour, but you're going to save tons of hours because I don't have to start over every time. And you know what you're going to get. You know, you're going to get a good product in the end. So Um, that's the idea. But again, like you say, these things seem obvious, but it's amazing how few people actually do them. You know, you know.
So true. Okay, I'll any last pieces of advice for somebody that's maybe just starting out or they want to progress in their career? Anything else that you like? Oh man, if I could tell somebody one thing, it would be this.
Yeah, there actually is, just because I got kids, you know, in early careers, so I have some practice, you know, thinking about it and trying to remember, you know, what and I guess there's nothing more, and I'm sure, Warren, in your business, you'd have some of these same thoughts, is learn, be really good at something, you know, don't be so fast to say, heck with this, I'm going to go, you know, I'm not progressing either with money or with title or whatever. I'm going to go jump to another company and start over. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I tell my kids, don't do anything for 5 years. And that is so countercultural right now.
Yeah.
Is evaluate where you are and what you're doing every 5 years, not 2 years, not 1 year, not 6 years, 5 years. And that's an arbitrary number, fair enough. But in other words, give it a little time so that you can actually learn something, you know, and become really good at something before you move on. And but on the other hand, don't just sit there stuck either, you know. So do evaluate, you know, am I going in the right direction? But don't do it every year, you know, because you don't know anything, and you're not, you won't build that kind of, I think uh uh maybe it's getting lost on some kids because they see people, and it's, oh man, this social media has made it worse, Warren. Is you, I will say 100% of my kids, who are all in their late 20s, early 30s, and younger people we hire here, they all, 100% of them, think the people they went to school with are doing better than them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
100%, no exceptions. And I remember feeling like that a little bit, but it was just sort of a vague feeling. Now they're absolutely sure, because they see on whatever they're doing these days, Instagram or Reddit or whatever. I don't even know what they are, but they see them, you know, and it looks like, man, these guys are doing great, you know. Well, no, they're not. And if you just stick to your own knitting, you know, and really learn something so that you become valuable by what you know, whatever that is, that's what's going to set you apart. Not the fact that you got a resume of 17 different companies of 6 months each, you know. Uh, uh, I actually am pretty good and pretty knowledgeable about this, you know, and sure, maybe that you'll get into something else later, but it shows that you can do that. You can become pretty dang knowledgeable about something, you know. And so anyway, that'd be my little bit of advice. So
I love it. It is countercultural because we want to promote, you know, we expect a career path and promotion in a career path, I think, faster than we used to.
right.
What I thought was very interesting. I was just doing quick math in my head. It seems to me that, you know, you've heard the stat about it takes 10,000 hours of doing something to be really good at it.
Right.
3 hours a week, 50 weeks, 5 years. Voila.
Well, that's amazing.
You just nailed it, right?
What do you know? What do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So that intuitive wisdom of the 5 year period to really get good at something is in fact a proven statistic.
Well, that's like I say, a stop clock is right twice a day. So
I thoroughly enjoyed our time, and I got some great
Likewise.
nuggets and pieces of wisdom that, and frankly, some stuff I haven't heard before too. So thank you so
Super.
much for
Well,
that.
thank you, Warren. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Take care.